Well, Sixers fans, in the wise words of Jim Carrey in the movie Dumb and Dumber, we're in a hole. We're just going to have to dig ourselves out.
It's not going to do us any good to sit here whining about it. We're in a hole. We're just going to have to dig ourselves out.
And that is certainly the truth for the Sixers, who now find themselves trailing in the Eastern Conference semifinals 2-0 against the Miami Heat after dropping Game 2 down in Miami by a score of 119-103. This is Planet 7-6 5-minute recaps, recapping every 76ers playoff game in roughly 5 minutes or so. This one hurt. I mean, this sucks. This sucks. If you've been keeping up with the Sixers any during this playoff run, you know that Joel Embiid has not been featured in this series due to the injuries he endured to close out the series against Toronto. And it sucks to not have the big fella. This is kind of turning into, at least right now, trailing 2 games, it's turning into the biggest what-if scenario in Sixers' recent memory. And, it's going to be, it's trending toward what if the Sixers had Joel Embiid. But we're not giving up yet. We hope that, obviously, what we do know is that the Sixers aren't going to win this series if Joel Embiid doesn't play. That's just something we know. It would have been tremendous, of course, to steal a game in Miami without the big fella. I mean, that would have been huge. And, that's a big what if in itself, to say, what if the Sixers stole a game? They come back to Philly, Joel Embiid's in the starting lineup, and the place is rocking. The Wells Fargo Center is getting ready, and unfortunately, that's not the story. The Sixers are going to come back to the Wells Fargo Center on Friday, hopefully with Joel Embiid. We'll see still. We've heard that he's making improvements, whatever that means regarding his injuries, and so hopefully we see Joel Embiid, and hopefully he's able to play well, and hopefully he's able to save this team, because that's kind of what they're in need of right now. I mean, Game 2, it's so clear that, watching this Sixers team play without their leader, without their best player, without a top 3, 4, 5 player in the world right now, there's no debate. Joel Embiid is in that conversation. To not have him, it's so clear how valuable he is to this team. I mean, if Joel isn't your MVP, watch the first 2 games of this series. Tyrese Maxey did his best to keep the Sixers in it tonight. He scored 34 points on 12 of 22. It seemed like he had every bucket down the stretch just trying to keep us in it. Did end up losing the game again by 16, but it was as close as, I think, 8 in the fourth quarter. James Harden had 20 and 9 assists on 6 for 15 from the floor. Tobias Harris has been good during the series, 21 in this one. Danny Green had a terrible night on the offensive end, 3 points, 1 of 10 field goal, from the field, and he was, I think, a game low in the plus minus category. George Niang had a rough night, 5 points. He fouled out despite only playing 10 minutes. DeAndre Jordan was a -9 in 13 minutes. Paul Reed was a -3 in 25 minutes. The Sixers didn't make shots. There was a lot of James Harden passing to an open man, and the open man did not make the shot. Sixers shot 8 for 20 from 3 for 27%. The Miami Heat shot 14 for 29 from 3 for 48%, and they had some big offensive rebounds, as they've had in games 1 and 2, having their way on the glass without the big fella in there. And again, the reality is the Sixers aren't going to win this series if Joel Embiid doesn't play. And I think if you're a Sixers fan and you thought different than that, then you were just sadly mistaken. So we'll see. Obviously I'm going to be keeping my eyes on whether or not Joel is going to play in Game 3. And we'll see if we can turn this series around. 1 game at a time. If we win Game 3, we win Game 4, we go back to Miami down 2. Tied at 2 rather than being down 2. I mean, this is a chance that the Sixers have to come home, regroup, and get 1 game at a time. And so, but the reality is, again, they're not going to do it unless Joel Embiid is there. So on one hand, this sucks. It sucks to say, oh, what if they had Joel in Miami? Maybe they win one of those 2 games, because there were moments in both where you think, well, the Sixers could do this. In Game 1, they were up at halftime by 1 point. In Game 2, they were within 8, and no one could stop Tyrese Maxey for a stretch. Or they were down 8, and no one could stop them. It just felt like they could do something here. And so on one hand, it sucks to say, man, 1, I feel bad for Joel. 2, if Joel would have played, maybe we could have done something here. And on the other hand, it's a realization that we're not dead yet.
Why all the long faces? We're not dead yet.
This is an opportunity to come home, to get Joel back, hopefully, and take care of business at home in front of the fans at the Wells Fargo Center. Again, watching this team shows why Joel Embiid is the MVP. Tonight, Bam had 23, Jimmy had 22, Oladipo and Hero combined for 37 off the bench, and again, they made 14 threes, good for 48% from beyond the arc, and so it sucks. It sucks to be down 0-2, and it sucks to not have Joel Embiid, but we're not dead yet, and the reality is we're in a hole, and we're just going to have to dig ourselves out.
We're in a hole. We're just gonna have to dig ourselves out.